The Precinct is a strange game. It looks like another open world police game, small city basic missions and a story that could have been ripped from any cop show ever made. But if you spend a few hours with it, and it starts to reveal something a little bit different. Beneath the cliches and the rough edges, there is a gameplay loop that is surprisingly addictive, a kind of low stakes chaos simulator that ends up being far more entertaining than it has any right to be. The setup for the Precinct sounds like it's pulled straight out of a cop drama. You play as a rookie officer stepping into the shadow of your father, who was this larger-than-life police chief, a local legend who was killed and his killer never found. From the start, the game leans quite hard on that legacy and then kinda just forgets about it until the end of the game. To guide you through it all, you're paired with a grizzled veteran cop who's right on the edge of retirement. He is the classic seen-it-all partner, the kind of person who you could predict every single line he will ever say in the game. And that is the problem with the story as a whole. It's made entirely of tropes. There is not one original idea, story-wise, in this game. Absolutely nothing will happen in this game that you have not seen somewhere else before. The pacing doesn't really help either. For most of the game, the story just kind of sits in the background, reminding you every now and then that yes, you are working towards something. There's basically two gangs who are terrorizing the city, and you basically need to just collect evidence. Whenever you arrest somebody, sometimes they'll drop gang evidence, and then you use that evidence when you've got enough of it to go after one of the leaders until you've got them all. But also, in the background, there is a serial killer on the loose that you need to try and find. That is pretty much it until the end of the game, where the game suddenly remembers that it initially had a plot. What makes this even weaker is the cast. There aren't any standout characters. There is nobody with a voice or personality that sticks with you after you finish the game. I'm recording this video about an hour after I finished the game, and I think I can remember 2 characters' names other than mine. The Precinct isn't a game you play for the narrative, and it's just as well because the story completely evaporated from my memory already. It's just scaffolding for the gameplay. However, I didn't want to play the Precinct for a good story. I wanted to play it for the police work. And thankfully, that's where the game delivers. Each in-game day starts with you choosing a shift, and from there, the city becomes either your playground or your headache. That structure gives the game a rhythm that is surprisingly addictive and never changes. You clock in, you head out, and you don't really know exactly what kind of day you're about to have, but when your shift ends, you come back, you get your XP, and then you go again. Sometimes it's slow and almost mundane if you're not getting the RNG on the evidence that you need. You're walking the beat, you're handing out parking tickets, you're pulling over drivers who litter from the cars, issuing fines to people that are spraying graffiti. These little moments might sound quite dull, but they actually really ground the experience, and they sell the idea that you are a working policeman, not some superhero waiting for the next action sequence so you could put on a latex suit. And the game rewards you for handling the routine side of the job, so it never really feels like filler. Other times you can just completely have your shift flipped on you in an instant. You'll get a radio call about a robbery in progress or a stolen car barreling down the highway. Suddenly you're chasing a subject on foot through back alleys, tackling them before they disappear into the crowd, or speeding across town to break up a shootout near a shop. It keeps you on edge because you never know if you're in for a quiet afternoon or a total disaster. And it's not just ground level stuff. Some shifts throw you into much bigger roles, like flying above the city in a helicopter, scanning the streets and just watching criminals and telling people where they are. It's moments like that where the game really shows off its range. You're not just doing one type of police work over and over. There is a form of variety here. Another layer that adds to the unpredictability is the way that backup works. You're not some lone wolf super cop taking on the bad guys alone. If you're chasing a suspect across the city and putting in the effort to keep up, the game will let you escalate by calling in support. Maybe you will request another squad car, or radio for a spike strip to be laid down on the next road over. Sometimes you can even call for a helicopter to come and track them from above. It gives your pursuits this sense of teamwork, like you're part of a wider police force instead of just a single character shouldering everything. However, it is definitely not to be relied upon, because a lot of the time you will call in a police car for help and it will come and ram you instead. The AI in this game, both for the enemies and for the other police officers, is incredibly bad. However, it is satisfying to watch a chase you've been sweating over end because your backup did box the suspect in, or nailed them with a strip and got rid of their tyres. And then there's the arrest process, which goes beyond just hitting a button and watching a canned animation. Once you've stopped someone, whether it's a drunk driver, a street brawler, or somebody who's been pulled over for murder, you actually go through procedure. You will read their rights, you will check their ID, you will search them, see if they've got anything, you will search their cars, you will breathalyze them if appropriate, and after all that, you decide whether to issue a fine, take them to jail, or let them go with a warning. It sounds small, but having that extra step makes encounters feel more like policing rather than just ticking boxes. You are weighing up the situation and making a call. Even if most of the time the right answer is incredibly obvious and common sense, it still sells the idea that you're working the job, not just blasting through another activity. Now, when it comes to the combat, it's not exactly polished, but it's still quite enjoyable, I thought. Gunfights are very scrappy and a lot awkward, with animations that don't always flow smoothly, but what makes them fun is the danger. You die incredibly fast in this game, which forces you to think about positioning instead of just charging in. You can't simply run headfirst into a bunch of gang members and expect to just walk out unscathed. Even small encounters demand some level of caution, because 2 or 3 enemies can just drop you in seconds. It's nowhere near the level of a super tactical shooter, trust me, that isn't what this is, but it pushes you to respect the fight. Every shootout feels tense because of how fragile you are, and all of this, the low-level busy work, the sudden chaos, the fragile but tense combat, stacks together into a gameplay loop that's way more compelling than it looks at first glance. You're never just doing one thing for too long, and that unpredictability is what kept me wanting to continue with the game. Driving, however, is hands down the weakest part of the Precinct, and it drags down almost everything it touches. On paper, the game offers a wide variety of vehicles. There's the standard cruisers, you can commandeer civilian cars, you can get the big fat riot van car things, I forget what they're called, but every single car, regardless of how big it is or how fast it is, moves like the city is built on ice. You are sliding around corners with this strange, floaty physics that never really click. There's no sense of grip, no weight to the tyres, just constant drifting that feels less like skillful control and more like you're fighting against the game itself. That sloppiness adds a kind of chaos when you're in the middle of a hot pursuit. If you're smashing through traffic or your car skids all over the road, it does create these wild, unpredictable moments that can be exciting. But outside of those improvised chases, the bad driving completely falls apart. Time trials, races, or any kind of structured driving that you may need to do becomes incredibly frustrating. You will line up the perfect corner only to watch your car spin out like you're on a frozen pond, costing you precious seconds. It doesn't feel like you're being punished for bad driving, it feels like the mechanics themselves are just out to get you. The real kicker is that you spend so much time in this game behind the wheel, getting to calls, chasing suspects, responding across town. Driving is central to the game's flow, and it never stops being clunky. It's not the kind of so bad it's fun clunky either. It's just genuinely really poor driving physics that undermine the pacing and make some missions feel like chores. The city of Averno, which is where the game takes place, is compact and easy to navigate. That is one of its strengths. You're never stuck with long stretches of downtime just getting from one end to the other. The scale feels just right for the kind of day-to-day policing that the Precinct focuses on. You'll quickly learn the grid of the streets, the handful of recognisable districts, and the shortcuts that make chasing criminals a lot easier. But while it is functional, it's also painfully generic. The city is made up of very, very normal buildings. It all looks the same. There's very little personality. There aren't any landmarks really that really stand out and make you think, oh yeah, we're over here now. It's the kind of urban backdrop that exists purely as a stage for the gameplay rather than as a focus setting on its own merit. Then there aren't the distractions sprinkled around, the collectibles, the time trials, the street races. In theory, these should flesh the world out, but they don't really add much. The collectibles feel like busy work, and the races and time trials only highlight how frustrating the driving is. What should be fun side content ends up reminding you of the game's weakest moments. The result is a world that serves its purpose. It keeps the action contained and the pace tight, but doesn't invite much exploration. You're here to do the job, run your shifts, and chase down criminals. Once you've done that, the city doesn't really give you a reason to hang around. And to be perfectly clear, I actually think this is fine. I platinumed the Precinct and it took me around 14 hours. I think you could definitely finish the main game in under 10. The world works for how long you spend in it, but I would be lying if I said I didn't wish there was a bit more going on. The Precinct is a game full of contradictions. The story leans on every cop drama cliche ever made. the legendary father, the grizzled partner, the corrupt system, and it never delivers characters or plot lines that stick with you at any point. But once you're actually in the thick of it, clocking into a shift and hitting the streets, the game finds its footing. The police work, from handing out parking tickets to coordinating chases with backup, has a variety and rhythm that makes it genuinely compelling. Even the clunky combat has its own tense charm, forcing you to think about cover and positioning instead of just running in blind. And then there is the other side, the driving in the city itself. The world is serviceable but forgettable, a stage that does its job but never surprises you. The driving is more than forgettable, it is outright bad, it undermines the races, it undermines the time trials. If we ever got more content like a Precinct 2 or something, then the driving would need to be improved. I'm actually not too sure I'd tune in for a Precinct 2 if the driving stayed like this. And yet, despite all of those flaws, there is something magnetic about the game. The unpredictability of a shift, the small decisions during arrests, the thrill of pulling in backup at just the right time. These are the moments that make the Precinct feel unique. It's messy, it's uneven, and it's often frustrating. But buried within that mess is a core loop that's unlike anything I've played in a long time. And that is why, for all of its rough edges, the Precinct earns its place to me as one of 2025's hidden gems. Thank you for making it to the end of the video. I hope that you did enjoy it. If you did, then please consider leaving a like, as it really does help. And if you want to see more videos from me, then please make sure to subscribe, as we are trying to reach 2,000 subscribers by the end of the year. But for now, that is all. I upload at least one video a week. Have a nice day, and goodbye.
These are my favorite shoes.